We are live now.
All right, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Just a reminder that we're on video and audio being streamed and recorded. I will call the meeting to order at 10:03 on January 22nd, 2025. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. For the roll call, let's just see who is in attendance for today. I myself, John St. Amand, I am Councillor for District 16 and the Chair. Do we have Vice Chair Joseph Allen on the line?
You do. Good morning.
Excellent. Good morning. Councillor David Hensby.
President and account for, sir.
Councillor Virginia Hinch.
Present.
Councillor Nancy Hartling.
I'm here.
Ayo, and I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce your last name right here and now. How do you pronounce your last name, Ayo?
Sorry, Chair is on the call.
Oh, okay. One missing. Darren Steves.
Same also is here to join the call.
Yeah. Okay. And Lara White, I see, is on the call.
No, thanks.
And representing staff, Gretchen Peter.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sherry Dillman.
Yes, I am online, and I apologize. I unfortunately can't figure out how to get my video to play for you all, but I'm definitely present.
All right, fair enough. And our legislative assistant, who is clerking the meeting, allow me.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. All right, so to begin with our agenda, I'll call for a motion for the approval of the minutes. First of all, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes as distributed?
No errors or omissions from the clerk's office.
Hearing none, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, sir, as circulated.
Second it.
All right, so we had moved by Councillor Hensby. Sorry, I missed who seconded.
Virginia.
Okay, great.
Councillor Hinch.
And call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? And the motion to approve the minutes is carried. Next up, item number 3 on our agenda, approval of the order of business and approval of the additions, any additions or deletions. First, I'll ask, allow me if there are any additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Yes, we have additions. That's item 10.1, but no deletions from the clerk's office.
Okay, so we have the addition of 10.1, which I see here. So the agenda already reflects that amendment. Can I call for a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Sorry, who was that motion from?
Joseph. Joe.
Okay. So moved by our Vice Chair, Joseph. Do we have a seconder?
Second it. Councillor Hinch.
And was that? Okay, Councillor Hinch seconds. Call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And the order of business as amended is approved. Item number 4, business arising out of the minutes. There are none. Item number 5, call for declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest among our members as a result from any item on the agenda? I'll call again. Are there any conflicts of interest? And for a third and final time, are there any conflicts to be declared? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, consideration of deferred business. There is none. Item number 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. For 7.1, Olami, are there any items of correspondence received by the clerk's office for today's meeting?
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
All right, so with no correspondence, we'll move on to item 7.2, petitions. Are there any petitions that have been received by the clerk's office?
Also, no petitions received by the clerk's office.
All right. 7.3, presentations. I see none. Item number 8, information items brought forward. There are none. Into section number 9, reports and discussion. We have a staff report, Regional Special Events Grant Program Review, item 9.1.1, to be presented by Sherry Dillman. Can I call for a mover and a seconder for a motion to have this presentation made to the group?
I'll move.
No, sorry,
Okay,
Chair.
moved by Joseph.
Sorry, Chair. Is a motion, a mover and a seconder for the motion itself, not for the presentation.
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
So the clerk, mute her microphone from time to time. I hear her tapping wildly on the keys. A little distracting.
Okay, sorry, the tapping on these keys is not from me. I
believe it was me. Apologies about that.
yeah.
I'm heavy on the keyboard myself, Joseph. Don't worry about it. Sorry. So procedurally, what do I need to call for, Alami?
Okay, yeah. The start there's a presentation, so we can wait to move the motion after the presentation.
After the presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll give the floor to Sherry Dillman for the presentation from Parks and Rec.
Okay. Sharon, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, so just give me some second. Let me share the screen.
I did prepare a wee PowerPoint presentation just to summarize the information report, which I believe will be uploaded here momentarily.
I believe we all have a copy of that as well.
There we go.
Excellent. Alrighty, again, thanks so much for having me. I would just like to take a few moments to review the information report that you have in front of you today. For review, this is regarding the Regional Special Events Grants Program Review that staff recently completed. So just to give you a little origin of why this information report came to be, in May 2024 at the Grants Committee meeting, the Special Events Grants Report, the 2024 one, was up for review and to comment. And along with the staff recommendation reports, the following statement was included in that report. It's written there in blue, but I'll read it aloud. As the Regional Special Events Grants Program has not been recently reviewed, staff intend to conduct a review of the program and return to the Grants Committee with findings and recommendations. So the review did take place, and this is why we're here today to discuss. To give you a little history on the events in the municipality, HRM has hundreds of events that residents can attend annually. Some of these events are delivered directly by event staff, my fellow colleagues, and is funded through the municipality's operating budget. However, the majority of events are delivered by external event organizers and certain community groups. So the municipality supports these external events by providing municipal funding programs, and these programs have evolved over the years. It began in 2010 with the adoption of the event strategy, which does outline the delivery of events within the city, and part of the strategy, it provided information on how to provide funding grants to the event organizers to assist in both community as well as major events. As per the direction that was within the strategy, staff reviewed the administrative processes which these grants were provided. And as a result of that process, administrative orders came to be, program redesigns and funding allocations were implemented. And this was all to improve the event granting process in the municipality and just ensure that it's completed in a clear and transparent way. So moving on to 2015, sorry, just back one slide, please. I know it's a fair bit of history. We've been doing events for a long, long time. In May 2015, Regional Council approved and adopted 2 administrative orders. One is the Marketing Levy Special Events Reserves Grants, AO, and that administrative order is geared more towards the large-scale special events, those that promote business and tourism development in the city. The second admin order that was approved back in May 2015 was the Regional Special Events Grants AO, the one that this report is talking about, that we're discussing in this presentation. And the Regional Special Events Grants AO is geared more towards the community and cultural celebrations, which basically improves the civic pride of our municipality and the participants in these events. Next slide, please. So the first intake for the Regional Special Events Grants AO was in the fiscal year 2016-2017. And as per this AO, it outlines all the different programs. There's 4 specific ones. They're highlighted in black there. Each program has its own set of criteria, eligibility, maximum grants, minimum budgets, etc. We'll talk about more in detail as the presentation advances. Carry on, please. Next slide. So the budgets for the Regional Special Events Grants Program, again, year 1 was 2016-17, and $215,000 was allocated to fund out of the operating budget C760. And as you can see in the chart there, the 215 fund 3 programs: the community celebrations, established community events, and significant anniversaries. Another budget, the Community and Events Reserve, Q621, $200,000 was allocated to fund the Cultural Events and Showcases program. And I put the maximum grant category in there for you to see. That's important as well. It ranges from $1,000 to $60,000, and that's annual grant as outlined in the administrative order. Next slide, please. I also wanted to note to the committee that 2 of the 4 programs within the Regional Special Events Grants Program awards up to 3-year sustainable funding. So that would be the Established Community Events and the Cultural Events and Showcases programs. So basically what that means is in year 1 of a 3-year cycle, the Cultural Events and Showcases program has a budget of $200,000, and the full $200,000 is awarded in year 1. So year 2 and 3, we don't open the intake until the following 3-year funding cycle. So it precludes any additional applications. The Established Community Events budget, which is 3-year funding, also shares the $215,000 budget, $215,000 budget with the community celebrations and the significant anniversaries, which are annual applications. So a portion of that $215,000 has to be saved or set aside for the following year 2 and 3 of the unknown, yet to be determined annual applications. Next slide, please. So of the combined program budget of $415,000, the municipality receives on average 70 community and cultural event applications annually. I would also like to note that the intake for the 25-6 fiscal year has closed. I'm working on that report right now, and there was 75 applications received this intake. So also, just to reiterate, the funding request received annually greatly exceeds the budget capacity each year. In 23-24, the combined $415,000 budget supported 67 community and cultural events. Almost 500,000 people attended, which is super awesome numbers. Next slide, please. So the funding requests annually for the C760 funded programs, which is community celebrations, established community events, and significant anniversaries, we received requests to the tune of approximately $380,000 for these three programs. And with the $215,000 budget, this allows the municipality to fund on average 53% of the asks. And I also would like to note that generally speaking, the established community events, which is the largest program of the three, probably in the 40s of the applications, do not ask for the maximum grant for that program, which is $25,000. Next slide, please. So additional budget constraints for the C760 event grant programs are specifically two historical established community events that 3 years ago in the first year one intake, for outlying instances, they did not make the intake, and supplemental grants were awarded to these two events for a combined $33,000. And that was funded from the Community and Events Reserve, not from C760. So the chart that I just showed you in the previous table does not include the $33,000. That's an additional cost. So just to note that these two events did apply in the recent intake and will be included in the 25-26 C760 applications. Another budget constraint that we're experiencing in the Regional Special Events Grants Program is significant anniversaries. Significant anniversaries is an annual application. They are noted as a special priority. However, a lot of times they are unexpected applications, unknown to staff that they are coming. Two examples below, or two examples that you see on the slide there, is the 150th memorial of the SS Atlantic and Alderney Landing's 25th anniversary. So significant anniversaries celebrates quarterly century applications that, you know, promote the heritage in HRM. And like I mentioned earlier, we do note them as a special priority. The maximum grant for this category is $10,000. However, when an unexpected significant anniversary comes in that year 2 or year 3 of the funding cycle, the 3-year funding cycle, it does create a budget pressure. To alleviate some of the unknowns, staff have built a database for currently funded organizations. An example would be Alderney Landing. Alderney Landing receives funding for established community festivals for a couple different items. So staff have now created a database that we can expect when the upcoming 25th anniversaries will take place for our known organizations, our currently funded one. However, there still will remain unexpected external events celebrating quarterly anniversaries like the 150th memorial of the SS Atlantic. So still a budget constraint for the significant anniversaries. Next slide, please. So moving on to the Cultural Events and Showcases Grant Program, which is funded from the Community and Events Reserve. On average, over the last 6 years, HRM receives requests to fund approximately $386,000. And with our allocated budget of $200,000 for this program, that allows HRM to fund 50% of the asks. And again, similar to established community events, the cultural events and showcases applicants generally do not ask for the program maximums, which is $60,000. So we're only funding approximately 50% of the asks, which are not the maximum asks. Next slide, please. Budget constraints for the cultural events and showcases. As we are all aware, the municipality's population is growing and becoming increasingly diverse, which generates more cultural events, which is super fantastic. The previous 3-year funding cycle received applications and supported 13 cultural events and showcases. This current 3-year funding cycle, which the report will be coming in the spring to the Grants Committee, received applications to fund 19 cultural events and showcases. So a significant increase in the next 3-year funding cycle. Next slide, please. This table is a lot of math, but basically is showing the event grant requests received per program of the 4 programs, and it's broken down over the past 6 years and compared to the maximum grants. So I kind of noted established community events, the maximum grant's 25, you know, on average, that's around 5,000 or less. Cultural events and showcases, again, is another program that's experiencing budgetary constraints. Overall of the 4 programs, HRM is funding 20 to 73% of the program maximums. So the the community celebrations, a maximum grant of 1,000. Generally speaking, on average, they're pretty close to the 1,000. It's more so the established events that receive 3-year funding that are hurting the most. Next slide, please. Event hosting costs. So I want to talk a little bit about event hosting costs, both externally and internally. External organizations have hosted community and cultural events for many years and are growing in size. Their events are getting larger and their duration of event is getting larger because our population has become so diverse, and it's awesome. However, labor and rental of equipment, which are 2 large event hosting costs, have grown in size quite immensely over the past number of years. Next slide, please, which is a slide to visually see the increase in event hosting cost. I chose one established community event just to visually see the increase in event hosting costs. So in 2019 is the first bar, 2024 is the last bar. The event hosting costs have increased in total 296%, which is the black bar. And the municipal funding amount has increased in this specific example from 1,000 to 2,500 in 2024, which is 150% increase, not the same amount increase as the event hosting costs have increased. And also, the data that I took to build this chart came from the final reports, which is a requirement to receive municipal funding, which includes a final detailed budget. Next slide, please. Internal event hosting costs. I wanted to add this as well, just to reiterate the point. So this data was taken from our internal civic event files. So files were pulled, and I chose 3 general event hosting expenses: security, police, and toilet rentals. 3 things that every event majority must have. And both the labor costs and the rental costs have increased significantly. And using the examples, security, police, and accessible toilet rentals, the percent increased varied from 47% to 126%, and that's in the last 6 years. Next slide, please. As staff receive new requests from community and cultural groups, the allocated program budgets are at capacity. I already mentioned 75 applications were received this intake, which is an increase in several of the categories. To adequately support the new community and cultural events, as well as the established events that we have here in HRM, staff will be recommending an increase to the funding capacities in the program budgets during the 25-26 budget cycle and going forward. The proposed budget increase of $115,000 to the current $215,000 operating, so that's for the 3 community celebrations, established community events, and significant anniversaries. This proposed increase would accommodate an increase in the grant awards from a 60% to an approximate 80% of the asks. This would include the 2 supplemental grants from the established community events that weren't included in the last 3-year intake. And also it would allow room for 1 significant anniversary application annually. For the cultural events and showcases, the proposed budget increase of $110,000 to the current $200,000 budget would accommodate an increase in the grant awards from 53% of the asks to 80% of the asks. So both of these proposed budget increases have been discussed with executive and are included in the 25-26 Parks and Rec budget envelope. Next slide, and I believe that's the report in a nutshell. And if there's any questions on anything in the report or in this presentation, I'm here to answer questions. And I do believe my manager, Billy Comer, is present. And my director, Brendan Smithson, I believe, is also present.
Thanks very much for that. I'll call each person on our speakers list in sequence for any questions that they may have to pose of you. We'll begin with Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's long overdue. If you even look at the inflation factor, we have not increased this budget allocation in over 7-8 years. So I think it's long overdue. But what I'd like to see, though, is both accounts equal, have an equal contribution. We have so much money coming from the hotel levy tax and another amount from the from general revenues. But I like to see them having equal contribution. So right now we're at 215 and 200,000. You know, the staff are recommending increasing that to 350 and whatever. I'd like to see them both be equal amounts. So if we could adjust that accordingly to make them equal amounts, be it 325 from both accounts. It shows that the municipality is putting equal amount of money on the table as the special events marketing levy is doing. So that's what I like to see, is a balancing on the 2 accounts so that we give equal contribution.
Councillor Hensby, thank you so much. I would just like to comment. Yes, this program is in need of a budget increase. It hasn't received a budget increase since its inception in 2016. I just wanted to mention, though, the marketing levy special events reserve grants is reserved for, it's a different program, so it's reserved for those tourism events that come to our city, like, you know, the tattoo, the buskers. So I'm not sure if those funds can be allocated to this regional special events grants program. Perhaps.
I thought a portion of this money was coming from the hotel levy tax for one of these accounts.
Go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, Blake Homer with this events division. Councillor Hensby, yeah, one of these accounts is through the Milser, the Cultural Showcases grant. I believe we'll have to bring this back to finance to ensure that we can do that. But do you have an exact total that you're expecting here as the matching fund?
Well, right now you're recommending an increase of 115 to make it 330. The other one an increase of 310 to make it 310. I would like to say the one that's make them both 325 in total, whatever, just adjust them accordingly. But I thought, I thought one of them was from the mill fund and the other one's from our general revenue. So I'd just like to see that the two accounts have an equal amount of contribution.
Yeah, understood. I believe we'll have to bring it back to finance to confirm, but we can probably put it on the table to bring the regional council for the next one comes up there.
Yeah, if you can put that perhaps as an alternative in regards to having equal funding distributed that way. And also another request, Sherry, I find that the event application for this program closes too early for some organizations to realize that. So this closed back in October, did it not, of last fall, for upcoming events, and a lot of groups are just probably trying to get their heads around now this time of year to apply. And for instance, I don't know, for instance, the Memory Lane out at Lake Charlotte, their 25th anniversary is going to be this Canada Day. And I don't know if they got an application at all. And I told them, I think you might have missed the deadline because they were asking me in December, and I think it closed in October. So I'm finding that our application deadline should be a little more closer to the fiscal years instead of being so far apart.
So, Councillor, actually, the reason that we have to, it actually ends on November 31st, November 30th, sorry, and that is the deadline because the process takes quite long. And what we ran into in the past was organizers saying that they weren't getting their funds in time to actually be able to use them for their events. They're still coming in at times around May to June by the time they see some of their actual grant money hit the account. So for small community-led events that don't have like a slush fund or a backup budget, it is tough for them. So this has become the new deadline based off of definitely some pressure. We also promote this throughout social media, through our communications division, and we also send out mass emails to past grant recipients. So at times, I definitely see that time for volunteer-led groups that might not have that time, but we have tried to get that out there, and we do leave it open for 30 days as well.
If you look at the application deadline for some of the federal cultural grants and stuff, I'm just finding that the deadline sometimes gets confusing out there between federal, provincial, and municipal grant lines. So it'd be kind of nice if we had a table and said, okay, these are the programs that are available from each of the levels of government and their deadline applications to make it easier for people to put one-stop shopping, find out what the deadlines are, and apply appropriately.
Great. Noted.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Any final items before we move on to Councillor Hinch? All good? All right, Councillor Hinch, do you have any questions?
No, pretty much Councillor Hensby has answered them all. It was a great presentation. Thank you for that. Yeah, I say give them more funding as well. So anything that we can do to help. What for the application process, when does it start? So it ends in November, but when does it start?
Yeah. So the application process opens on November 1 and closes on November 30th. And the notifications come out, the week before that they're there to make sure people are on it and they're paying attention to log in.
Just a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish that could be extended a bit or added on some more time, maybe 2 months.
Chair, I mean, is that something that we could bring back for review?
We certainly can. Staff are the ones that choose the intake time period. It's just how many intakes per year is what's outlined in the AO, but we did change the intake period one time in the past. which kind of relates back to what Billy mentioned earlier, and that didn't work so well for the external event organizers who were not ready to submit information about their final reports and whatnot, because we tried to do it earlier so we could get the money out sooner, because it is a lengthy process that has to go through the grants committee and then regional council for final review. But we can look at extending the deadline or the intake period, sorry, you know, whether it's 2 months or October 1 to November 30, that's something we definitely can look into for future intake years. So the next intake in this program will be this coming fall for next year fiscal funding.
Mm-hmm. And when do the emails go out to let people know that these fundings are coming? Or
well, they have been since, except for 1 year, November 1st every year for the past 9 years of the program's existence. So generally the organizers know November 1 is Municipal Funding Day, and the morning of November 1st, when the applications are posted online, is when the mass emails go out. There could be some emails between staff and external organizers in between that say, don't forget the upcoming application intake is coming soon. But the mass email goes out on day 1, the morning of.
okay. So with that being said, I think that, and what I see and what I hear a lot is that, you know, I don't have enough time to do the full the application. How long is the application process? Like, how many pages is there? How detailed is it? That type of thing.
I mean, there's
It's really, sorry, Sherry. It's not an exhaustive application, to be honest. The community grants application is basically 10 strong questions about, you know, dates, times, looking into overall budget. You're asking questions about what the entertainment will be, what cultural elements are involved. But overall, it's really not an exhaustive application like you would see with a major event that we're looking into different economic impact levels. It really, it's quite condensed, and we've worked on that over the years to make sure that it's simplified. So it really is not more than a few days work. And a lot of times we haven't seen many people call in or write us saying that they missed a deadline. I think this year we had one and we were able to extend that. It was for Vivian Kane with North Crescent Days. They actually didn't have the ability to have the computer accessible at the time. And so they had to print and bring it into the office. And so we allowed them to have an extension. And with these community-led events, we try not to have the extension, but there's times that we're able to do that for folks that have just not had the accessibility to get there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinch. Councillor Hartling.
Hi, I just want to confirm one thing. When I read the presentation in advance of this, I didn't think anything of it because I thought that we were talking about the historical past. But now I want to be very clear because I want to be sure that there's no conflict of interest. I am a member of the SS Atlantic Historical Society. The 150th memorial anniversary was last year. And so I just want to make sure that everything, because in my head when I saw that line item, I thought that it was, like I said, it already happened. I have the t-shirt. So I just want to be clear that, you know, everything related to that is done and wrapped up, and that okay, perfect. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a reference to significant anniversaries of that in Alderney Landing that we funded. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that there was no conflict there in any way. Okay, I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hartling. And you're not wearing the t-shirt now.
I should have worn the t-shirt. It was an amazing celebration, and it's such an important and historical piece of District 13. So I can't say enough how important these grants are to the communities where these celebrations happen.
Amazing.
Coming next to our list, Lara White.
Hi, thanks. I just have a couple of really quick questions. I guess I was struck upon reading the report. I mean, I fully understand that costs inflate over time, and again, fully support this programming. But I was really struck by the extraordinary increase in costs for security. And I was wondering if there's any background to that. Is it that security requirements are increasing, or is it that the cost per person working is increasing? Like, if any insight into that, because it really stood out amongst the three numbers that were highlighted. That's my first question.
Yeah, so there's actually two parts to that answer. Internally, I can tell you that our standing order with Garda World has increased based off our livable wages proposal. So basically, we've gained from $25 an hour to $35 an hour over 1 year. And that's in our internal events. So that has definitely taken our budgets internally off. Externally, what has happened since COVID is there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of inability to hold staff. And so they've raised their minimum wage at most of these main locations. So someone like Shadow Security, and then we have Garda as well, and then Joel Security. All three of them have raised their minimum wage quite significantly, which then means they have to put another percentage over the top to have their lead security. And it's really coming all across the board, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks for that. And, fully support a living wage for anybody who's working in security. So it's not to question whether the value. I was because that number was so much higher than the proportionate increase of the other two, and equally for Halifax Regional Police. The second question I had was really just in relation to reporting. So when they're reporting back, because I'm assuming that these grants are just a portion of their budget, obviously, they're not the totality of any of these events. I'm assuming they get private funding for various parts. And I was just wondering, in the reporting back to you, is this an earmarked contribution for a specific part of an event? Or is it just for the entirety of the budget? Are there things that you exclude, or would it be ineligible? Or how do you look at it in terms of the application? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so there is definitely exclusion pieces to the puzzle here, but it is a portion of the event. We don't actually take an exact reference point to their budget to fund that. What we normally do is do a blanket references of what can be funded, and normally that falls into the actual event expenses. We try not to dive into staffing, into different other elements that would have rental fees for office space. What we really try to do is look at the budget and then condense to what sections are actually entertainment that are going to come back to the public. Those are normally the elements that would be supported by the HRM.
So I'm assuming in the report then they would have to, do they have a financial reporting requirement that would say, okay, so the total event was 200,000 and this grant of 5,000 contributed to, or do they have to demonstrate where they got the other funding, or what do your reports back look like?
Yep. So they provide their entire budget, normally just your standard revenue and expense budget that needs to balance in the end. In some of the MILSER categories, it's a little bit different, but in community-led events, we're looking for basically your expense and revenue, and we're going to take a statistic and sort of do some data there to say how much do you qualify for and how much do you require for this event.
And do they have to disclose sorry, this is now more than two questions, but do they have to disclose the other funding sources? Like, I'm just curious about that as well, just from a procedural perspective.
So they do normally in their revenue section, we'll see if it's sponsorship. They don't necessarily have to write the exact sponsor of who it is. There is times where it is November, and we do understand that this could be, a draft budget at the time. It could, and so that's why in our final report, we hope to see something like, hey, was it from a direct sponsor? Who's that direct name? And then did the province submit money? We want to see that. Did the federal government add any money to that budget? Those are all listed within the revenue side of the budget.
Great, thanks for that.
Thanks very much, Lara. Vice Chair Joseph Allen.
I don't have many questions there. I just wanted to echo Councillor Hinsby's comments where, I've been on this committee for quite some time now, so it's kind of nice to see that number increase so we can kind of put on more events and kind of expand the program a little bit as our community grows. So does the diversity. It's nice to see that being expressed throughout the province and the city. I just one comment, and I don't know if anyone could help with it. I thought there was at one point a program for training community members to be used for events in lieu of police officers. I thought there was a program or an initiative that was being looked into, but I can't remember when.
So to chair, to you, the vice chair, is this has been discussed multiple times over the years. And what has happened is through the charter of the province, it's been quite difficult to get that approved. I think what you're meaning to confirm is talking about working at barricades for parades and having volunteers take over some of those bills that have been hit with police fees at times. Is that where you're referencing from?
Correct.
Okay, so that what has been decided is we have the ability to have peace officers and bylaw officers potentially trained, which will still be internal employees, and actually it would be less of an hourly rate. However, there would still be an hourly rate. We haven't got to the point where major intersections will have a volunteer or even traffic authority yet for a closed street, unfortunately. That has not been approved. But it is something that we have been working on, and it's something that HRP has actually been backing lately, and believe that it is time to try and have some support for those folks.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I like the intent behind the initiative, just because it reduces costs and it allows for additional staffing to be provided as well. So I'm overall a big fan of it. But yeah, no, I'm very happy to see the program grow, and appreciate the effort that the staff have put into this program, into the report as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I've got a couple of questions myself to tack on here at the end. I completely echo Councillor Hensby's suggestion that not only is the budget increase warranted, but I think balancing out the budgets available would make a lot of sense as well. It's notable the growing divide between the operational costs of these events and the grant funding that's available to help offset those costs. So whatever we can do to provide the community support so that those events have a chance at making a go at it is important. And I'm curious whether or not we've done an assessment of this notion of staff being trained as special constables. Do we know, have we forecast what that impact would be with events that we have historically supported? Because in many cases, like I'll use an easy example, the Bedford Days or the Light Up Bedford Parade, or even the event that I used to run as part of Bedford Days, policing was a major cost component of things. And so for the Light Up Bedford Parade, they have one of those 3-year grant applications that they're coming to the end of, and hopefully they wound up submitting within the deadline for the last one. I'm curious whether or not we have a sense of what the impact would be for organizations like that, because in many cases, they're applying for a grant, receiving that grant, and then some of that grant money is then in turn coming back to HRM in the form of cost recovery on policing and so forth. So, or even the barriers to mark off streets during something like a parade, all of which entail costs that in turn come from the city. So do we know what the financial impact would be for, like, if we cherry picked an example event, what the cost recovery would look like after we have the ability to have special constables as opposed to policing for all forms of traffic control for an event like that?
I'd have to bring you back the exact math because we don't have their hourly wage with me right now. It's something we could look into. I know in the past, Councillor, we've also been able to review in-kind services and the recovery model. So there is multiple cities in Canada, like a Calgary, Vancouver, that don't do cost recovery. What they actually do is they have a budget set aside for their special events task force, and that group meets to decide what events will need that support, and they have an actual budget that they can use directly to support events. This has been brought to council in the past. It wasn't successful at the time, but it is something that could be brought and it could be a motion that is raised to review once again the in-kind services that have been given out to community-led events and major MILSR events as well. That could give us a competitive advantage, quite honestly, especially at the major event level. But it is, you know, it will be sitting in the range of anywhere between $1 to $1.5 million. It is a significant amount of funding if we do go there again.
Okay. Another question that popped into my head as we were reviewing some of the tables that were presented in attachment 1, the table that showed the C760 programs. It looked like the requests had not yet quite reached pre-COVID levels, but were still trending up. Is that, you know, granted the table only went back to that 1 year prior to COVID. So I'm just curious whether or not that that is accurate. You know, do we have a pretty strong sense of what the trend line is on the number of applications that we would receive, and therefore, you know, the commensurate change in the budget? Are we going to have a diminishing return on the number of the proportion of funding requests that we can satisfy if that number continues to climb, even with the budget increase?
I'll leave that. Sherry, do you have an intel on that right now from the current process?
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah, this year, this upcoming fiscal year, 25-26, we have received the highest amount of applications since pre-COVID. So unfortunately, COVID did retire a couple events, but we are now back to our approaching 80 events, which is fantastic and is about 10 to 15 more than we have received in the last 3 to 6 years.
Okay. And I would imagine that's sort of a combination of net new events as well as events coming back that existed prior to COVID, maybe took a few years off and are since coming back to fruition.
A lot of new events, maybe 1 or 2 that have returned from taking a break during COVID. Volunteer levels have, you know, that's another issue too.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of new cultural events that you will see in the upcoming staff report.
Right. I have to imagine that so just to shift to how we go about getting people to apply. You know, there's the intake period, but then the awareness period, which you touched on, the notion that there are, you know, there's a mass email that goes out at the opening of the period, and there's probably a little bit of an awareness campaign leading up to that initial application window. You know, I think the point raised earlier, and forgive me, I can't remember who mentioned it, that one of the challenges with the volunteer-driven organizations in particular is the turnover of their volunteer group, not just the recruiting of the volunteers that operate a particular event, but those that actually at the director level organize an event. And sometimes there's enough turnover year over year that, you know, if their event occurs in the summer, for example, they'll be completely checked out of the process until early in the new year when they feel like they can start to recruit additional members. I know the Bedford Days Committee has felt that pressure year over year as well. And so the application window being where it is, I understand what the fundamental reason for it being at that time in order to allow the processing time to occur. But there are certain organizations that will remain challenged to be able to participate in that process because they may have had leadership changes immediately following their annual event, and they may not have reconstituted their leadership prior to that grants application window. So just something for us to be aware of. You know, I think one of the things that we may need to do, particularly with the aid of the database of regular events that you spoke of, is maintaining as regular a contact as we can with them, even outside the application window, so that they have that on their radar at regular intervals when their leadership team is still actively doing things, even if it's not the best time for them to think about. At least it's prior to their leadership team all scattering to the wind, prior to the following year being reconstituted to organize themselves again.
I think it's an excellent point, and it's something that me and Sherry can take back for sure, to think about different ways that we can communicate throughout the year, whether it's a mass email that comes, maybe it's a quarterly update on events, and something that we can think about for sure.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so if I'm interpreting my notes correctly here, the motion that we would then be looking to forward would wind up being a motion that the Grants Committee forward the staff report dated January 9th, 2025 to Halifax Regional Council for information. Is that correct, Alami?
Yes, very correct.
All right, so do we have, let me grab this and I'll put it in the chat so that someone can read it as they are making the motion. There we go. Oh, I've put the language of the motion in the chat. Can I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Hartling, if you would read the motion, please.
I move that the Grants Committee forward the staff report dated January 8, 2025 to Halifax Regional Council for information.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Joseph Allen. And I'll call for the question.
No, before we do that, in regards to the request, I made a suggestion perhaps of balancing the two. Could there be an alternative maybe brought forward in regards to having equal funding balance between the two accounts?
Olami, would that constitute an amendment to the motion?
I would leave it to staff in regards to could it just bring back an alternative in regards to balancing the accounts. Is it an amount of 115,000 for one and 105 for another? Just make sure that they're both equal to what's the amount they're putting up to now? Up to 330 and 310. So you know, they could be 315 a piece, whatever. I'm not sure if they can balance them out.
Right.
Sorry, Billy, do you want to go with the amendment or should wait to get to the regional council?
Well, what I can do is let's put this one forward and I'll work with staff in regards to having, when it comes to council, we can probably have a debate at that time about adjusting the amount accordingly.
That's true.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder with the motion as it stands now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, nay. And the motion carries. All right, we'll move on to our added items. 10.1 HRM Anti-Black Racism Grants Program Fiscal 2024 Awards. We have a staff presentation from Russell Brooks. Oh, sorry, there's not a presentation, but will be available to answer questions regarding the staff report that was attached to our agenda. And so we'll go through the individuals on our speakers list again in that same order. So we'll begin with Councillor Hensby.
I'll pass at this moment. Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Hinch.
I briefly went over it. I didn't have a chance to really review it fully, so I'm going to pass it this time.
All right. Councillor Hartling.
I have nothing to add. I will pass it this time.
Okay. And Clara White.
Likewise, I didn't have an opportunity to review it as closely as I would have liked to, but no comments.
All right. Vice Chair Allen.
I have no comments or feedback at this time.
All right, and finally we come to me. I did review it. I would really defer to the expert on this one. I'm very happy to accept the report as presented and for our information item for council. So I believe the language for this particular motion would be a little bit different. Is that right, Olami?
No, same motion on the agenda. So it's just to have a mover and a seconder.
Trying to find the language of the motion itself.
I can move it if you want. I have it on my screen.
Sure.
It is recommended that the Grants Committee recommend the Halifax Regional Council approve the 13 awards as detailed in attachment 2 of this report for a combined total of $104,000 from operating account MABR001 Anti-Black Racism Grants.
Thank you, Joseph. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Hartling. All right, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ensuring that you're off mute.
Sorry.
And the motion is carried. And that concludes the usual order of business. We are at item 11. The date of our next meeting will be February 27th, 2025. Can I get a call for an adjournment of the meeting?
Motion.
And moved by Vice Chair Joseph Allen. So we officially adjourn at 11:03 a.m. on January 22nd, 2025. Thank you, everyone, for managing to get through yet another Grants Committee meeting, the first that I've chaired that had much on the agenda to speak of. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.